Thank you all for coming today. Good afternoon. I am Tom Levis. I'm the president of the Iowa Bar Association. And I'd like to clean up a misperception that a lot of Iowans have, and perhaps legislators have. The Iowa Bar Association is a trade organization. It has nothing to do with nominating commissions, how they are selected. They have nothing to do with the control of nominating commissions. The Bar Association represents the 7,500 or so lawyers in the state, but is not involved in nominating commissions. Now, having said that, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about my background, and there's kind of a reason for me doing this, and you'll find out. But I grew up in little Sheraton, Iowa, which is a little town south of Des Moines, about 50 miles, where my father was best friends with a pretty famous judge in Iowa, William Stewart. Those of you that remember Judge Stewart, Bill Stewart was on the Iowa Supreme Court, and he was later a federal district court judge, and he was also a Republican leader in the House of Representatives back in the 50s when the merit selection system was first proposed and adopted. I have been a lawyer for 41 and a half years. During my career, I've done criminal defense. I've represented people in big cases and little cases. I've done jury trials. I have done bench trials. I've represented people in counties all over the state. I've practiced in front of both federal courts, the Southern District and the Northern District of Iowa. There was a significant time in my career when I was at the courthouse every day. And I mean 5 days a week. Mr. Olson back here was right there with me on a lot of the times. After practicing for 41 and a half years and being in front of judges so much, I thought I might have kind of a good idea of what a good judge might look like. So I applied to be a member of what we call the Polk County Judicial Nomination Commission, or it's also known as the 5C Commission. And several of my commissioner pals are here in the room with us today. But I was elected in 2014 to the 5C Commission, which is by far the busiest commission of all the commissions in Iowa. For those of you, and I suspect most of the people are lawyers here, but we have 15 commissions in Iowa. There's the State Judicial Nominating Commission, which takes care of Supreme Court justices and Court of Appeals. Then we have 14 district court nominating commissions around the state. 5C, or the Polk County one, is the one here in Des Moines, and it takes care of the judges in Des Moines. I got elected to be on that commission by my peers, by the lawyers in Des Moines, by the lawyers here in Polk County. I believe they elected me as a commissioner because they thought I'd been around, I'd experienced a lot of experiences at the courthouse, and that I might be a good person to participate in the selection of our judges. When I was elected to be on the commission in 5C, I thought I might have the opportunity to pick one or two judges over the next 6 years. You serve for 6 years. In the last 5 years, we've been involved with 10 judges. We've had a big turnover, which has been an absolutely fascinating experience. Just so that you all know, the current lawyer members of the commission in Polk County, 5C, are Jake Firehelm. He's a longtime criminal defense lawyer who's probably been practicing for, I don't know, at least 40 years. Fred James, who's a longtime civil plaintiff's lawyer. Brooke Timmer, who's an employment lawyer. And a woman named Angie Schutz, who is primarily a divorce lawyer. The governor-appointed members, some of them are here today. Nicole Crane, I don't know if Nicole's in here with us or not, but Nicole is with, she's a vice president here at ABI. Steve Bowl, I did see Steve, he's around here somewhere. He's a businessman from Ankeny, and he's the husband of Carmen Bowl, who many of you know, I think is the clerk of the Senate. Marvis Landon, she's the wife of John Landon, a representative from Ankeny. And then Tom Bernal, who is a banker and a businessman from Des Moines. When a judge retires, the commissioners are notified. We have a little organizational meeting. We set a deadline for when candidates apply, and we set a deadline as to when they're going to get interviewed by the commission as a whole. Over that approximately 30 plus days, we get applications from everybody that wants to be a judge in Polk County. The applications are extensive. I see a lot of judges in here, they had to fill them out. They're awful, they're very thorough, they're very extensive, and I'm sure they're a pain in the rear to complete, but we need them. They also go into all sorts of background information about what kind of practices they've had and the like. We get background checks on them, criminal background checks. We see all that data. And we get letters of recommendations. We get calls from lawyers and non-lawyers all over the county, making recommendations on this person or that. I said 10 people that I've been involved in, 10 judges I've been involved in. The first one, I thought it would be important for me to print everything off. You know, I'm still kind of old school, so I was going to print off all the applications, everything else, so I'd have them in a book. The stack of materials that I got for that first time was over 1.5 feet tall of the materials that were provided to us. Each one of the commissioners got that. Each one of them had to read it, and I know they all did. I know the appointed members and the lawyer elected members did. In addition, we talked to lots of people about the candidates. In terms of talking directly with candidates, I can tell you that I've always been contacted by candidates ahead of time before the position was even posted. So I would go to Panera's or their office or my office or someplace, and we would sit down and chat for an hour or two and talk about why they want to be a judge, why they think they'd be a good judge, and separate themselves from maybe other candidates. I think most of the commissioners do that. I'm pretty certain that all of the lawyer commissioners do that. We get like writing samples from all the commissioners, extensive writing samples. Sometimes they're 100 pages, 150 pages long, but we read them. We do read them. Anyway, after we've got all the applications in, we have the interviews in a conference room at the courthouse, and all the commissioners, all 11 of us, sit around the table, the 5 appointed members, the 5 lawyer members, and the judge, which in the past has been Judge Gamble, but since he retired, it's going to be Judge Rosenberg in the future. We sit around the table, and the candidates come in one by one. They talk to us for 20, 30 minutes and tell us about why they should be a judge, and we get to ask them lots of questions, and all the commissioners do. We all ask questions. But one of the things we don't do, we don't ask political questions. We don't ask them what party we don't care. We're not involved in that. No one asks them how they vote on a case. No one talks to them about whether they would reverse a decision by somebody or not. We don't ask political things because it's not a political situation. We're looking to try to select the best candidates that we can send to the governor's office. After we've interviewed all the candidates, then we sit around and for about an hour, we talk about the candidates, the pros and the cons, why Tom likes this one and is not so high on this one, and we do that all the way, Nicole likes this one or whatever. We talk about it, and we do all the pros and cons about it, and exhaust that. Once we're done with that, then it's time to vote, and it's a secret ballot, so we don't know, and I don't know who all votes for whom, but I can tell you that the voting process generally takes very short time, literally minutes, because the cream kind of rises to the top. You all kind of know, the lawyer members and the appointed members kind of know who the best candidates are. There's always 4, maybe 5 out of sometimes 20, 25. There's kind of 4 or 5 that are just kind of there, and that's what happens. So the voting usually doesn't take very long. If somebody gets 6 votes, that's more than half. They're nominee number 1. Then we vote all again with the rest of the candidates. When somebody gets 6, that's nominee number 2, and the chief judge then sends those 2 names to the governor's office, who gets to select one of the 2. The relationship among the commissioners, several of them are in here. After you've done this 10 times, and you've been in these commission meetings, and we've had organizational meetings, and we talk on the telephone too. I think we have a very good relationship among ourselves. I didn't know any of them before I went on the commission. I didn't know any of the appointed members until I went on the commission, but I can tell you that I've become pretty good friends with them, and I appreciate what the qualities that they bring to the commission. Now, I tell you about this background because I think it sets me apart from Professor Fitzpatrick. He's not practiced in Iowa. he doesn't know our judges. He doesn't know our judicial nomination process, what we're doing in our commission meetings. He's never practiced in Des Moines. He's never served on any nominating commissions. And so, and you heard him talk about some studies and the like, but let's talk about the real data. I think we should talk about the real data. Let me tell you about the data. And we got this data from the state of Iowa, all right? From the state of Iowa. On the State Judicial Nomination Commission, the one that appoints and selects the candidates for the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals, the eight appointed members are all Republicans. Of the elected members, 5 are Democrats, 2 are Republicans, and there's 1 independent. There are 17 members on the State Nominating Commission, 10 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 1 other. If the Republicans all vote together, there's no way any left-leaning candidate could get appointed to the Iowa Supreme Court or the Iowa Court of Appeals. It can't happen. District court commissions. There are 14 of them around the state, including 5C, the one that I'm involved in. Of the 14, 12 of them are controlled by Republican commissioners. They're controlled by Republican commissioners. The 2 that are not are District 5C, which is one I'm in, which is Polk. And the other one is the Iowa City, it's District 6, it's Iowa City and Cedar Rapids. And in both 5C and in District 6, the commissioners are split 50-50. Half of them are Republicans and half of them are Democrats. But in the total of all the commissioners in all the commissions across the state, right now 67% of them are Republicans. 2/3 of them are Republicans. There's nothing theoretical about those numbers. That's the data we got from the state. We thought what would be interesting would be in each judicial district how the Democrat-Republican makeup compared with the population base in those particular districts, how what's the proportion of Republicans on these commissions to the proportion of Republicans in that particular district. In 5C, the number of Republicans on the 5C commission, they're 22% higher than the Republicans generally in Polk County. In 2A, which is Franklin County and Cerro Gordo, north of Des Moines, all the commissioners are Republicans. It's 41% higher for the Republicans in that district than what the population base is. I can do that with every judicial nomination district, every judicial nomination commission in the state. The Republicans control each and every one of them. That data is also in the pudding. The last 3 justices appointed to the Supreme Court, Justice Mansfield, Waterman, and Justice Christensen, are all, I think without question, conservative Republicans. I know that there's been lots of talk in the legislature and around the state that these left-leaning lawyers are running the State Judicial Nomination Commission. Well, if they are, they haven't done a very good job. Professor Fitzpatrick claims that he's examined data for Iowa justices from 1990 to 2010, that he looked at their political contributions to determine their, whether they're left-leaning or right-leaning or what. It's the only problem I have with that data is it's illegal in Iowa. It's against the canons of ethics for judges to make political contributions. So I don't know where he got his data. But I know that the data that I'm giving you tonight is accurate, and it's real data, and it's came from the state. In addition, I think Professor Fitzpatrick will talk about the number of justices, and there were, from 1990 to 2010, there were 15 Supreme Court justices, 15 of them. During that period of time, 10 of them were appointed by Republican governors, Governor Ray and Governor Branstad. 10 of the 15. The 5 were appointed by Governors Vilsack and Culver. Again, the Republicans controlled the show. Let me talk to you about business. The Chamber of Commerce publishes a state-by-state survey of state courts. They rank each state by fairness and reasonableness. Some of you may have seen this, but Iowa, for instance, ranks currently number 13. Prior to 2012, it was always in the top 5. It dropped after the fiasco after the retention election in the same-sex marriage case, but it still ranks number 13. Professor Fitzpatrick State, Tennessee, ranks 30. He will tell you that he successfully persuaded Tennessee to eliminate its judicial nomination system like we have here in Iowa. And he was successful. They did change it. And after they changed it, Tennessee went from 19 to 30. Let me tell you some other statistics from that United States Chamber of Commerce survey. In terms of courts' treatment of tort and contract litigation, Iowa ranks 15 out of 50. Tennessee, 20. Courts' treatment of damages, Iowa ranks 9 out of 50. Tennessee's 23. This is what I like. Judges' impartiality. Trial judges' impartiality. Iowa ranks number 9. Tennessee, 30. Trial judges' competency, Iowa ranks 21. Tennessee, 36. If changing our judicial nomination system to what they did in Tennessee is the answer, I submit to you that there's no reason to race to the bottom. The quality of appellate review, this is a real interesting one for me too. This is what the Chamber of Commerce says. Iowa ranks number 11. Tennessee, 36. I am the bar president. As the bar president, I get to go all over the state and all over the country really and meet with other bar presidents and other bar leaders. I can tell you without a doubt, without any hesitation, they all say to me, boy, I wish we had a judicial nomination system like you have in Iowa. Now, why should lawyers elect lawyers to the commissions? Good question. It is a good question. Well, let me give you one good answer right off the bat. It's because Charles Grassley and Dave Stanley and Bill Stewart and the Republican leaders back in the 1950s thought that was the way it should be done. And they'd done an extensive study of it at the time, and that's the way they passed it. You know, the legislation to adopt merit selection wasn't something that was proposed by Democrats. It was proposed by Republicans. Nothing's changed since 1959, 1961, or 1962 when the amendment was passed by the voters of Iowa. Lawyers do a better job of vetting these candidates. We do have special training. We do have special knowledge. We know about the job of being a judge. We appear in front of them all the time. We know what makes a good judge, what makes a fair and impartial judge. Political leaders in Des Moines, having them pick members of the commissions, especially the lawyer members of the commission. I mean, Senator Peterson, the minority leader of the Senate, I haven't asked her this question, but I suspect she doesn't know the names of the lawyers in all the 14 districts where there's nominating commissions to a point. She'd have to ask somebody. She wouldn't know. Why not let the local people in the local communities pick those nominating commissioners? You know, if we're all interested in local control of things and getting it out of the federal government or getting it out of the state government and having local control, letting the political leaders in Des Moines make all the selections on the nominating commissions makes no sense. That's at least that's the position that we take. You know, tides will turn. In the 50s, before merit selection, we elected judges, and the Democrats controlled the elections. That was one of the reasons why Harvey Uhlenhoff and Bill Stewart and Dave Stanley and people like that decided they wanted to try something different because the judges were all Democrats. I will tell you that I wrote an article about this a couple of months ago, and I got a telephone call one night, and it was from this guy. I thought it was a prank call, to be honest with you, but it was from Neil Smith. I think he's 98 years old, 99, something like that. Congressman Neil Smith. He was in the legislature in the late 1950s. And he calls me on the phone. He says, Tom, I read your article. I just want you to know about what life was like back in the late 1950s. The Republicans came to me and to Lex Hawkins and the other Democratic leaders at the time and said, we know you're winning all the elections, the judicial elections, but we would like to change this to adopt a merit selection system, which is the one we have today. And Neil said, you know, we thought about it, we talked about it, and we were like, well, should we do it or not? And after about 6 hours worth of conversation with their caucus, they said, you know, the tide's likely to change someday. Someday, that might not be the case. The Democrats might not be winning all the elections. So they went along and they told Harvey Uhlenhout and the folks that were proponents of this legislation, absolutely we'll go along with you. So the support for this system that we have in place today was bipartisan. And then, of course, it was passed by the Iowa voters. Activist judges, I know that's a big topic. You know, we have activist judges, and that's why I want to tell you about Bill Stewart, Judge Stewart, because I remember this. Well, I was just in high school, but Bill Stewart was the first beneficiary. He was the first person that was appointed to the Supreme Court based on merit. And one of the cases that he got, many of you will understand, it's called Catco versus Briney. Does anybody remember that case? You know, it's a very famous case. And it was a case of, it was the trap gun case. You know, this Briney fella had been tired of people breaking into his house. And so he set a trap gun out in his yard. And so that when the burglars came to break into the house, they would trip over this wire and the gun would go off and stop them. Well, Briney was going to rob this guy's house, I think, and he tripped over the wire and he got shot. He was seriously injured, and the case went to court. And the Supreme Court gets the case, and they conclude that the trap gun was not appropriate, wasn't right, and that Mr. Catco was entitled to monetary damages. And Bill Stewart was the author of that opinion. And in Little Sheridan, Iowa, where I was from, out on the golf course, he caught more hell than anybody. You are an activist judge. You know, what were you thinking when you issued that decision? And it was in the newspapers as being an activist saying, well, you know, as we look back on it today, I don't think anybody would have disagreed. Not only anybody would disagree with him today. But I tell you, my dad was shocked about it. My dad thought he was wrong. But you know, that's what judges have to do. They have to make tough decisions. This thing about change in merit selection, you know, I didn't see any candidates campaigning on this last year. People really haven't had an opportunity to weigh in on this. You know, and I'm not sure why that is, but this is a very significant change to the way we select our judges. The people that occupy the third branch, the third co-equal branch of government, and to not involve the people is just wrong. One of the concerns that we have is that if the governor and the legislative leaders pick all the commission members, including the lawyers, the party in power could stack the commissions with unqualified lawyers who don't have a clue what makes a good judge. Or they could stack the commissions with lawyers pursuing a specific political agenda. It's just not right. Bringing politics back into the system is not right. There's a reason Charles Grassley and Dave Stanley and Bill Stewart and other Republican leaders back then did it the way they did. And there's no reason to change today. Thank you all very much.